Every morning at precisely 9:15, the bell above the door of Foxglove Books chimed, and Willow Nichols would look up from her inventory list to see him, the handsome stranger in impeccably tailored suits who never bought a thing. Today, as rain pattered against the shop windows, she watched him shake droplets from his umbrella before carefully placing it in the brass stand by the door, wondering why a man who clearly belonged in the gleaming skyscraper across the street kept returning to her dusty little haven of literature. Xavier Rowland shook the rain from his coat and inhaled deeply, savoring the comforting scent of paper, ink, and possibility that permeated Foxglove Books. His eyes immediately found the petite brunette behind the counter, her curly hair piled messily atop her head as she concentrated on her task. He'd first wandered in 6 weeks ago seeking shelter from an unexpected downpour, and now he couldn't seem to stay away, not from the books and certainly not from her. "Good morning," Willow called out with her usual friendly smile. "Nasty weather today," Xavier nodded, returning her smile. "Perfect for staying inside with a good book, though. Finding anything interesting?" she asked, watching as he made his way to the classics section, just as he did every morning. "Still browsing," he replied, the same answer he gave each day. Willow returned to her inventory, wondering why the handsome stranger never purchased anything despite his obvious interest in the books. He would spend precisely 45 minutes browsing, occasionally reading passages, before checking his watch and departing with a polite nod. What Willow didn't know was that Xavier Rowland wasn't just any businessman from the towering office building across the street. He was its owner along with 16 other properties throughout the city and the CEO of Rowland Investments, a company valued at just over $2 billion. Xavier ran his fingers along the spines of leather-bound classics, pretending to be absorbed in titles he'd already read dozens of times. In reality, he was stealing glances at Willow as she assisted an elderly customer, her animated expressions and genuine laughter making his heart beat faster. There was something refreshingly authentic about her that he couldn't find among the polished, calculating people who populated his world. His phone vibrated with an incoming call, and he reluctantly checked the screen. His assistant's name flashed urgently. With a sigh, Xavier stepped toward the exit, nodding politely to Willow as he retrieved his umbrella. "Have a nice day," she called after him. "You too," he replied, wishing he could say more. Outside, the rain had intensified and Xavier answered his phone while opening his umbrella. "What is it, Marcus?" "Sir, the Tokyo investors moved the call up by 30 minutes. They're waiting in the conference room now." Xavier quickened his pace toward his building. "I'll be there in 5. As he crossed the street, he glanced back at the charming bookstore. He'd purchased the entire block 6 months ago with plans to demolish it for a new development. Now, he couldn't imagine being responsible for the destruction of Willow's beloved bookshop. He needed to find another solution, one that wouldn't reveal his identity or intentions, until he figured out how to approach the spirited bookshop employee who had unwittingly captured his attention. Willow watched the mysterious man hurry across the street toward the imposing glass building that housed several financial firms. She'd nicknamed him Suit in her mind, though she found herself increasingly curious about his actual name. He moved with confidence but lacked the arrogance she associated with the financial types who occasionally wandered into her shop. "You should ask him out," said a voice behind her, making Willow jump. She turned to find her coworker and friend, Olivia, grinning knowingly. "Don't be ridiculous," Willow replied, busying herself with straightening a stack of bookmarks. "I don't even know his name." "That's easily remedied by actually talking to him," Olivia pointed out. "He's in here every day at the same time, staring at you over the top of whatever book he's pretending to read." "He is not staring at me," Willow protested, though her cheeks flushed. "Girl, that man is not interested in our dusty old books. He's interested in you." Willow shook her head firmly. "He's probably just killing time before meetings. Besides, men like that don't date women like me." "Women like what? Smart, Beautiful, passionate about literature, women who make minimum wage working in a bookstore that's barely staying afloat, Willow corrected her friend. I'm practically drowning in student loans from my literature degree, and my apartment is the size of a shoebox. You don't know anything about him, Olivia said gently. Maybe he's just a regular guy who works across the street and happens to appreciate both books and pretty bookshop employees. Willow rolled her eyes but couldn't help smiling. Let's get the new display set up before the afternoon rush. Across the street, Xavier sat in his expansive corner office after concluding the call with his Tokyo investors. His mind kept drifting back to the bookshop and its enchanting employee. He delayed the redevelopment project for months now, unable to move forward with something that would displace Willow and destroy the place that clearly meant so much to her. His assistant, Marcus, entered with a stack of documents. Sir, we need your signature on the final demolition approvals for the Westfield Street properties. The contractors are getting antsy about the delays. Xavier stared at the papers, a weight settling in his chest. I'm reconsidering that project. Marcus looked up in surprise. Sir. The projected ROI is excellent, and we've already invested considerably in the planning phase. I'm aware, Xavier replied, but I'm thinking we might modify our approach, perhaps a restoration project instead of complete demolition. That would significantly impact profitability, Marcus pointed out. Sometimes there are more important considerations than profit margins, Xavier said quietly, earning a puzzled look from his assistant. I'll have the team draft some alternative proposals, Marcus said finally. After his assistant left, Xavier walked to the window. From this height, he could just make out the vintage sign of Foxglove Books. He'd been visiting the store for weeks, drawn initially by Willow's warm smile and infectious passion for literature, but increasingly fascinated by her intelligence and quiet determination as he overheard her discussions with customers about everything from obscure poetry to modern fiction. He'd never experienced this kind of connection before, certainly not with the socially ambitious women his mother kept introducing him to, who viewed him as a prize to be won rather than a person to be known. The next morning, Xavier arrived at Foxglove Books with a determined plan. Today, he would actually speak to Willow beyond their usual brief exchanges. The bell chimed as he entered, but instead of Willow's welcoming smile, he was greeted by an unfamiliar face behind the counter. Good morning, the woman said cheerfully. Looking for anything specific today? Xavier hesitated. Actually, is Willow working today? The woman's smile turned knowing. She's in the back, unpacking a new shipment. She should be out soon. I'm Olivia, by the way. Xavier, he replied, then immediately regretted giving his real name. Recognition flashed briefly in Olivia's eyes. His family was well known in the city, his face occasionally appearing in business publications and charity event photos. Olivia's expression shifted subtly. So you're Xavier Rowland, he nodded uncomfortably. Yes. Interesting, Olivia said, studying him with newfound intensity. Very interesting. Before she could say more, Willow emerged from the back room carrying a stack of books. When she spotted Xavier, her face brightened. Oh, good morning. Your usual section? She asked with a smile. Xavier nodded, relieved she didn't seem to recognize his name or notice the silent exchange between him and Olivia. He retreated to the classics section, mentally revising his approach. This was more complicated than he'd anticipated. As he pretended to browse, he overheard Olivia's urgent whispers to Willow. Do you know who that is? Olivia hissed. The morning browser. No idea, Willow replied, arranging new releases on a display table. That's Xavier Rowland. As in Rowland Investments. As in one of the richest men under 40 in the entire city. Xavier winced, pretending to be deeply interested in a collection of Dickens when he saw Willow glance over at him with wide eyes. You're mistaken, Willow whispered back. Why would someone like that spend every morning in our little shop? I don't know, Olivia said meaningfully, but I intend to find out. Xavier selected a book at random and approached the counter, where Willow was now standing alone, Olivia having disappeared into the back room. "I think I'll actually purchase this today," he said, placing the book on the counter. Willow looked at his selection, Pride and Prejudice, and raised an eyebrow. "Austen fan, it's been years since I've read it," he admitted. "Thought it might be time for a revisit." As she rang up his purchase, Willow seemed to be studying him with new interest. "You know, you've been coming in almost every day for weeks, but I don't even know your name." He hesitated only briefly. Xavier Rowland." Willow nodded, no recognition flickering in her eyes. "I'm Willow Nichols." "It's nice to officially meet you, Willow," he said, relieved that his name meant nothing to her. "I've enjoyed coming to your shop. It's peaceful." "Compared to what you normally do, I imagine it would be," she replied, then immediately looked embarrassed. "I mean, I don't know what you normally do, but you're always in such nice suits, so I assumed." "I work across the street," he said simply, not specifying that he owned the building rather than merely working in it. "Investment management." "That sounds complicated," Willow offered, handing him his book in a paper bag emblazoned with the shop's logo. "Sometimes, not always in good ways." He hesitated, then decided to take a chance. "Would you perhaps want to get coffee sometime? There's a great little cafe around the corner." Willow blinked in surprise, a blush spreading across her cheeks. "Oh, sure, that would be nice. Tomorrow, during your lunch break, maybe?" "I take lunch at 1 o'clock, she said with a shy smile. "Perfect, I'll meet you here." When she nodded, Xavier felt a wave of unfamiliar nervousness mixed with anticipation. "Until tomorrow, then." As he walked back to his office, clutching his newly purchased copy of Pride and Prejudice, Xavier knew he needed to figure out how to tell Willow about his connection to her bookstore's building. The longer he waited, the worse it would seem when she eventually discovered the truth. The next morning, Willow found herself spending extra time on her appearance before work, switching outfits 3 times and applying more care to her makeup than usual. She felt ridiculous. It was just coffee, not a date. Still, learning that her mysterious daily visitor was actually Xavier Rowland had thrown her for a loop. A quick internet search the previous evening had revealed just how wealthy and influential he truly was. "Why would someone like him be interested in someone like me?" She muttered to her reflection as she applied a final touch of lip gloss. By the time 1 o'clock arrived, Willow's nerves were stretched thin. Xavier arrived precisely on time, looking slightly less formal in a crisp button-down shirt without a tie, though his pants and shoes still screamed expensive. "Ready?" he asked with a warm smile that eased some of her anxiety. The cafe was bustling with lunchtime customers, but Xavier led them to a quiet corner table as if by magic. After they ordered a simple black coffee for him, a caramel latte for her, an awkward silence fell. "So," Willow began, desperate to break the tension, "do you actually like books, or was that just an excuse to visit our shop?" Xavier's eyes crinkled with amusement. "I genuinely love books. My father had an extensive library, and I spent most of my childhood hiding among the shelves, reading everything I could get my hands on." "That sounds wonderful," Willow said, imagining a young Xavier surrounded by books in some grand, wood-paneled library. "It was my escape," he admitted. "My father had very specific expectations for my future, and books offered glimpses of different possibilities, different lives." "Yet you still ended up in investment management," Willow observed. "Family legacy is a powerful force," Xavier said with a slight shrug. "But I've tried to do things differently than my father did. Use the resources at my disposal for more than just accumulating more wealth." Their conversation flowed easily after that, ranging from favorite authors to childhood dreams, punctuated by genuine laughter and moments of surprising connection. By the time Willow realized she needed to return to work, nearly 2 hours had passed. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, gathering her things. "I completely lost track of time." "I'll walk you back," Xavier offered, settling the bill despite her protests. Outside the cafe, Xavier hesitated. I enjoyed this, Willow. Would you consider having dinner with me tomorrow night? Willow felt a flutter of excitement. I'd like that. I'll pick you up at 7 if you're comfortable sharing your address. After exchanging numbers and her address, Willow returned to work floating on air, only to be immediately confronted by an expectant Olivia. Spill everything, her friend demanded. You were supposed to be gone for 30 minutes, not 2 hours. It was just coffee, Willow protested weakly. With a billionaire who's been making heart eyes at you for weeks. He's not a billionaire, Willow corrected. Just a millionaire. And he's actually really down to earth. Olivia rolled her eyes. They all seem down to earth until you find out they have a helicopter pad on their penthouse. He's not like that, Willow insisted, though a small voice in her head wondered what she really knew about Xavier Rowland. That evening, Xavier sat in his home office, struggling to focus on work. His thoughts kept drifting to Willow, her animated expressions when discussing her favorite books, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, her complete lack of pretense or agenda. It was refreshing and terrifying all at once. His phone rang, displaying his mother's name. With a sigh, he answered. Xavier, darling, came Alina Rowland's cultured voice. I'm calling about the Harrington Gala next weekend. The Blakely's daughter will be attending. You remember Victoria. Princeton graduate, absolutely stunning, impeccable family, mother, Xavier interrupted gently. Please stop trying to set me up. I've told you repeatedly I'm not interested in these arranged introductions. Darling, you're 34 years old. It's time you settled down with someone appropriate. The board members are beginning to comment on your continued bachelor status. It projects instability. Xavier pinched the bridge of his nose. My personal life has no bearing on my ability to run the company. In our world, everything is connected, Alina replied. Just meet her, that's all I'm asking. I've actually met someone, Xavier said, surprising himself with the admission. There was a brief silence before his mother asked, Who is she? What family? She's not from our world, as you put it. She works in a bookstore. His mother's incredulous laugh was exactly the reaction he'd expected. Oh, Xavier, how quaint. Well, enjoy your little distraction, but do keep the Harrington Gala in mind. After ending the call, Xavier felt a renewed determination. His mother's dismissive attitude only reinforced how different Willow was from the calculated, status-conscious women in his usual social circle. But he still hadn't told Willow about his ownership of her building, and the longer he waited, the more difficult the conversation would become. The following evening, Willow spent an hour getting ready for her dinner with Xavier, finally settling on a simple but elegant emerald green dress she'd bought on sale months ago but never had occasion to wear. When her doorbell rang precisely at 7, her heart leapt to her throat. Xavier stood in her doorway holding a small bouquet of wildflowers, looking devastatingly handsome in a tailored charcoal suit. His eyes widened appreciatively at the sight of her. You look beautiful, he said, handing her the flowers. Thank you, she replied, touched by the thoughtful gesture. Come in while I put these in water. Xavier entered her small apartment, taking in the overflowing bookshelves, comfortable but worn furniture, and the collection of framed literary quotes on her walls. There was nothing luxurious about the space, but it was undeniably Willow, warm, unpretentious, and filled with personality. I love your home, he said sincerely. Willow laughed as she arranged the flowers in a mason jar. It's tiny and the heating is temperamental at best, but it's all mine. Xavier drove them to a small, intimate restaurant tucked away on a side street, not the opulent establishment Willow had half expected. The owner greeted Xavier by name and led them to a quiet corner table. I hope you don't mind, Xavier said as they settled in. This place isn't flashy, but the food is incredible. It's one of my favorite spots in the city. It's perfect, Willow assured him, relieved by his unpretentious choice. Throughout dinner, their conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by laughter and moments of genuine connection. Willow found herself increasingly drawn to Xavier's thoughtfulness, intelligence, and the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. He asked questions about her life and dreams, listening with genuine interest rather than merely waiting for his turn to speak. "What made you want to work in a bookstore?" he asked as they shared a dessert. "Books have always been my refuge," Willow explained. "My parents divorced when I was young, and I moved between two homes that never quite felt like mine. Books were the one constant, my own portable world that I could carry with me." Xavier nodded in understanding. "My escape too, though for different reasons. My world was stable but rigid with expectations." "And now," Willow asked, "does your work fulfill you?" Xavier considered her question seriously. "Parts of it do. I've steered the company toward more sustainable investments, established scholarship programs, funded community development. But there's a lot of politics and pretense that wears on me." As the evening progressed, Willow felt increasingly comfortable with Xavier, almost forgetting the vast differences in their circumstances. When he drove her home and walked her to her door, there was a moment of charged anticipation between them. "I had a wonderful time," she said softly. "So did I," Xavier replied, his eyes moving to her lips. "May I see you again?" Willow nodded, and Xavier leaned in, kissing her gently. The kiss was tender, unhurried, conveying an emotion deeper than mere attraction. When they finally parted, both were slightly breathless. "Good night, Willow," Xavier said, his voice husky. "Good night," she whispered back, watching him walk to his car before closing her door and leaning against it, her heart pounding with possibilities. Over the next few weeks, Xavier and Willow's relationship blossomed. They spent evenings exploring hidden corners of the city, having passionate discussions about literature and life, and gradually learning each other's histories, hopes, and insecurities. Xavier introduced Willow to his favorite art galleries and jazz clubs. While she showed him quirky bookstores and cozy cafes he'd never discovered despite years in the city. For Xavier, these weeks were a revelation, a glimpse into a life defined by genuine connections rather than strategic alliances. He found himself sharing thoughts and feelings he'd never voiced aloud, drawn by Willow's authentic nature and thoughtful insights. For Willow, the relationship was both exhilarating and occasionally intimidating. Xavier never flaunted his wealth, but it was evident in subtle ways: the ease with which he paid for expensive meals, his casually mentioned international trips, the luxury car he drove. Sometimes she wondered what someone like him could possibly see in her long term, yet the growing depth of their connection was undeniable. When they were together, the outside world with all its disparities seemed to fade away, leaving just two people who understood and complemented each other in unexpected ways. But a shadow hung over Xavier's happiness, the secret of his ownership of Willow's building. Each time he considered telling her, the moment never seemed right, and his fear of losing her trust grew stronger. The reckoning came unexpectedly on a Tuesday afternoon. Willow was working when her boss, Henry, the bookstore owner, emerged from his office looking ashen. "What's wrong?" Willow asked, immediately concerned. "I just got off the phone with the building management company," Henry said, his voice strained. "They've finally revealed who purchased the building 6 months ago. Roland Investments. They're planning a major redevelopment of the entire block. We have 90 days to vacate." Willow felt as though the floor had dropped from beneath her feet. "Roland Investments, as in Xavier Roland," Henry nodded grimly. "The very same. Apparently they've been planning this for nearly a year but kept delaying the formal notifications. Corporate giant swallowing up another neighborhood landmark," he sighed heavily. "I'm sorry, Willow. I know how much this place means to you." The rest of the day passed in a blur as Willow processed this devastating revelation Xavier had known all along. While developing a relationship with her, he'd been planning to destroy the place she loved. Every visit to the bookstore, every conversation about her passion for her work, it had all been a lie, or worse, some twisted game. That evening, Xavier arrived at her apartment for their planned dinner date to find Willow waiting with cold fury in her eyes. "When were you going to tell me that you own my building and are planning to demolish the bookstore?" she demanded the moment he entered. Xavier's face paled. "Willow, I can explain." "Explain what?" "That while you were kissing me and sharing intimate dinners, you were simultaneously planning to destroy my workplace. Henry got the eviction notice today." "That wasn't supposed to happen," Xavier said, running a hand through his hair in distress. "I've been trying to change the development plans, so you admit you knew," Willow cut in, her voice breaking. "All this time you knew and you said nothing." "I should have told you from the beginning," Xavier acknowledged. "But by the time I realized how I felt about you, I was afraid of losing you. I've been working to modify the project to preserve the bookstore." "Stop," Willow interrupted, tears welling in her eyes. "You lied to me, Xavier, by omission but still a lie. How can I trust anything you say now?" "Willow, please." Xavier stepped toward her, but she backed away. "I think you should go," she said quietly. "I need time to think." Xavier stood frozen, the pain in his eyes matching her own. "I never meant to hurt you. What I feel for you is real, the most real thing in my life." "Maybe," Willow replied, wrapping her arms around herself protectively. "But it doesn't change the fact that you weren't honest with me. Please go." After Xavier left, Willow collapsed onto her couch, tears flowing freely. She'd fallen in love with him, a realization that hit her with full force only now that she felt betrayed. The thought of never seeing him again left an aching hollowness in her chest. But how could she forgive such a fundamental deception? Xavier returned to his penthouse in a state of despair. He'd finally found someone who saw him for who he truly was, who challenged and inspired him, and he'd ruined everything with his cowardice. He'd been so afraid of losing her that he'd created the very situation he most feared. For 3 days, Xavier respected Willow's request for space, though every hour without contact felt like torture. He threw himself into finding a solution, calling emergency meetings with his development team and architects. On the 4th day, he couldn't wait any longer. He walked into Foxglove Books, ignoring Olivia's glare as he approached the counter where Willow stood rigidly. 5 minutes, he requested. Please. After a long moment, Willow nodded stiffly and led him to a quiet corner of the store. I've spent the past 3 days restructuring the entire development project, Xavier began without preamble. The new plans preserve this building entirely. Foxglove Books will remain exactly as it is, with a reduced rent locked in for 10 years. Willow's expression remained guarded. Why should I believe you? Xavier handed her a folder. These are the officially filed amendments to the project already approved by the zoning board. It's done, Willow. The bookstore is safe. She glanced through the documents, her professional mask slipping as relief flickered across her face. Thank you for this. Henry will be overjoyed. I didn't do it to win you back, Xavier said quietly, though I desperately want that. I did it because it was the right thing to do, and because I finally understood that my father's approach to business, valuing profit above people and community, isn't the legacy I want to build. Willow studied his face, searching for sincerity. The bookstore was always important to you, wasn't it? That's why you kept coming back, even before we met, Xavier nodded. At first, it reminded me of my childhood sanctuary in my father's library. Then I met you and it became about so much more. He took a deep breath. I love you, Willow. I know I've given you reason to doubt me, but that's the truest thing I know. Willow's eyes glistened with unshed tears. You hurt me, I know, and I'll spend however long it takes earning back your trust if you'll give me that chance. I need more time, Willow said softly, but I miss you. And I think I love you too, which makes this all so much harder. Xavier's heart leapt at her words, but he tempered his hope. Take all the time you need, I'll be here. 2 weeks later, Willow finally called Xavier. They met at the cafe where they'd had their first coffee together, the tension between them palpable but less acute than before. I've been thinking about us constantly, Willow admitted after they were seated. About trust and forgiveness and what matters most. Xavier waited, hardly breathing. What hurt most wasn't just the secret itself, but feeling like I didn't know who you really were, she continued. Like everything between us might have been built on shifting sand. Nothing about my feelings for you has ever been false, Xavier said earnestly. I believe that now, Willow replied. Your actions since that night have shown me who you truly are more clearly than words ever could. She reached across the table and took his hand. I want to try again, Xavier, with complete honesty this time. The relief and joy that flooded through Xavier was overwhelming. Complete honesty, he agreed, squeezing her hand. Always. In the months that followed, Xavier and Willow rebuilt their relationship on a foundation of transparency and trust. Xavier introduced Willow to his world, gradually including a disastrous dinner with his disapproving mother that ended with Willow calmly, but firmly defending her value beyond her social standing. To Xavier's surprise, his mother eventually developed a grudging respect for Willow's intelligence and unwillingness to be intimidated. Willow, in turn, showed Xavier how to find joy in simpler pleasures: weekend picnics in the park, cozy nights reading aloud to each other, volunteer work at local literacy programs. His presence in her life didn't fundamentally change who she was or what she valued, but it expanded her world in ways that complemented rather than overshadowed her own passions. 1 year after their first coffee together, Xavier took Willow to the rooftop garden of his building at sunset. Among blooming flowers and twinkling lights, he dropped to one knee and offered her a ring, not the ostentatious diamond his mother had suggested, but a vintage emerald that had reminded him of her eyes and the dress she'd worn on their first date. Willow Nichols, you've shown me what really matters in life. Will you marry me? With tears in her eyes and a radiant smile, Willow answered, yes. They were married 6 months later, in a ceremony that balanced elegance with intimacy, held in the garden of a historic library with their closest friends and family in attendance. As a wedding gift, Xavier surprised Willow with the deed to Foxglove Books, transferred into her and Henry's names as co-owners. Now it can never be taken away, he told her as she cried happy tears against his shoulder. 3 years later, Foxglove Books had expanded to include a cozy cafe and community reading space, becoming a beloved neighborhood fixture. Xavier had restructured his company to focus more on community development and preservation projects rather than purely profit-driven ventures. Together, they had created a life that honored both their worlds. On a quiet Sunday morning, Xavier entered their bedroom carrying a tray with tea and toast, finding Willow already awake, reading in the soft morning light. Their 10-month-old daughter, Charlotte, slept peacefully in the bassinet beside the bed. Good morning, love, he said, placing the tray on the bedside table and kissing his wife tenderly. Willow smiled up at him, her eyes filled with the same warmth that had first captured his heart in a small bookstore years ago. Good morning. As Xavier settled beside her, Willow rested her head against his shoulder, and they sat in comfortable silence, listening to their daughter's gentle breathing. In that peaceful moment, both reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought them together, a journey that began with a millionaire seeking shelter from the rain in a bookstore, and a bookseller who had no idea that the daily visitor in the impeccable suit was already falling in love with her.